or resetting. Yeah, good afternoon. Certainly, it's not going to be the matrix reload, but we are going to. It's going to be our communication, and then wrap up. So I guess we need the slides. Reboot. So let us actually ask, what's the question? Spoofing is a problem. Spoofing can be used for a number of attacks from SYN TCP flood and SYN ACK and amplification. So amplification by itself, per se, is not a separate thing, is not in a vacuum. It's a result of a problem that you can actually replace some kind of address, and there are vulnerable services that can be used to wage an attack. And let me just allow the people to take their seats. I think we can continue. So the number of services actually kept going down over the years, and I believe that you are also to praise because you are checking what's happening in your network and cleaning it. But unfortunately, the number is still high because there are services outside of your network, and we can do nothing to those externals. But we can fight spoofing because we see the traffic. And there's a document, ITF, on fighting spoofing at the level of IP transit, offering 3 modes, 3 settings to block spoofing traffic. First is, let us consider, is strict mode. In fact, it is quite strict, truly strict. If the package comes from an interface which does not show the route to the address, so the package should be dropped. So complete symmetry of traffic, and it cannot work otherwise. So the second is a loose mode, which is opposite to strict mode. If a route exists to the source address, any, then the package is valid. Certainly, it presents some limitations on attack. So certainly, you cannot arrange the private range or non-routed network, but still, it is not a problem for hackers, a real problem. And feasible mode, at first glance, it looks good. So what is it? We're not talking about the best route, but alternative route. So if we get a package from an interface and at least one alternative route points to this interface, so it looks all right. And in this case, in this example, the C provider, without even using the B route, but can see it as an alternative and drops, will not drop the traffic from X client. But what if the X client has clean backup link, which does not announce any prefixes? In this situation, there is no alternative route. No B, no C has it, and the outgoing traffic will be dropped. So for that reason, we say that no one in his right mind does not use URPF at the seams of, well, with the transit operator. What are the solutions? So there is spoofing problem, so we might have some solutions for that. Before solving the problem, let us actually determine why this gap, why URPF doesn't fail. URPF means that information about the accessibility distributes through the BGP vector protocol. But BGP is not meant to create accessibility, but to manage, to control traffic, to ensure policies, symmetry, community, everything that the protocol exists for, and it does not match the goals that we try to address. BGP does not have an information message that a network is accessible and it allows to use your PO. So what can be done about it? First, creating new sub-address group. Create with the BGP protocol and messages new protocol that to exclusively pass the information about the network availability. So it should work separately from the routing protocol. And it might be the right way, and once in the future we may find it. But even if we believe that tomorrow we can build the proper specification, good spec, it will take decades before we reach the stage of adoption. And second is to invent the ways to do without those information messages and create the tools or use the tools we have. The first way is quite popular. Turn AS sets into ACLs for filtering the traffic. As we know, our clients actually provide sets for us to build ingress filters to filter the announcements. But on the other hand, these sets ideally are the customer cone. And if we use this prefix list as ACL rights, we may get the spoofing fighting method in transit. And this option is good because it does not require any further BGP setting or upgrading the software, but it has a problem with scalability. And because of the very IS nature, they are not authorized. They accumulate errors. And ACL are finite rules. And imagine you have a client who announces 2 prefixes, but in his set, he has 5,000 prefixes. So you calculate the ACL rules that you need. And considering you have many operators, the number is going to be infinite. But there is a solution, and I know that some operators use it, but it's special. It's special. The second option, in fact, use of shutdown communities. As we spoke in the previous section, I started talking to Timothy Griffin about applicability of this community. But let us continue. What is Qrator shutdown community? You need to put BGP session. It's planned. And if you just push disable, if you just press disable, it may cause the situation of dynamic cycles, and you lose part of the traffic. And the idea of a community is that before breaking the session, you mark all your announces through certain lines. And this is a well-known and transit community. At least the idea is like that, and it will drop, of local pref of everyone to 0, all the recipients to 0. So it will kind of collapse. So your supplier will use it as a main route, but when you copy it, when you disseminate, the provider will switch to A and then announce B. And finally, we get the situation when the route from the C provider will get the priority, then direct route from X. And when the traffic shrinks to 0, we just break the session without any risks or losses. But let us have a look. We have a route from B provider, alternative route, and it's not used. It's definitely not used. So we're getting this information BGP message that we were seeking. So announce and Qrator shutdown creates the information message. which can disseminate the information about availability, and in this case, use RTF feasible mode. But certainly, there are some kind of, well, specifics. After the process, it will not go further. So the C provider will not be able to see. And it actually narrows down, and you can use this tool only at the edges of connecting systems. But 15% of transit, and there's 80% of multi-home networks. So the area of applicability is quite big. So what can we say about this solution? Just like in the first option, we don't need to replace the hardware and change the protocols. If we don't have a well-known Qrator shutdown community, you can do it on your own. It's not that hard. And what is the deficiency? You need to convince your clients to start using it. And it may turn out an impossible load of work with your clients. But still, it is not a solution. It is an opportunity. What is another alternative that we have? Do nothing. But I don't know what's going to happen next year. So the deficiency of this situation is you can make local decisions, but then the highest weight will belong to the decision made by the majority. If you start filtering your traffic, you will do good. But if Rostelecom in Russia doesn't do it, then your effort is minute. So I'm talking about the possibilities here, and the decision is up to you, at your discretion, and you better look at your neighbors. So it is high time we innovate. I ask you to prepare your cell phones. It's not a joke. I'm not going to call you. Please get your cell phones up. Get your cell phones ready. I hope it's gonna work. Please scan this QR code. I promise no phishing. Well, I started this poll, and today we at the Excel, and today we are finishing at ENOG, so it's now or never. I hope you scanned it, and let us have a look at the results. I'll give you 30 seconds to comply. Well, I think you're still voting, but we can draw some conclusions already. A large number of operators use some anti-spoofing measures, and I'm happy that approximately, 22% are ready to join. But at least many operators would be ready to join and work with their clients for better ecosystem in the web. And still, a large number of operators are not ready to apply anti-spoofing methods, or they will wait. They'll be waiting for complete automation, which is probably marks the turn to, well, utopia. Maybe there'll be some solution for that, maybe not. But honestly, I want to have this information in order to see what we do in our network. I hope this information will be useful for you as well. I thank you for your attention. Questions? Just to clarify, so these results are with RIPE or without? Yes, with RIPE, and now with ENOG and in between. This is the cumulative number of the two events and in between. Hi. Roman from Nutcracker. Why are you trying to address the problem in the place where it has never existed? Why don't you try to address the problem at the operator's side? Why in transit? Probably those who connect end users don't do it. So option 5, you need to address the problem where it appeared. URPF by default at the interfaces, or adding this setting in the template, in the configuration, in the setup. Indeed, well, what you said is right. It's not a kind of regulation, but a technical trick. Yes, it is possible. If you can write an ITF draft, it will make the people happy who came here, and probably it will change the behavior at the routers by default. The only way to change the default behavior is to convince vendors that the standard has changed and you need to behave different. If it is BCP 38 or 380, and actually it boosts such behavior at all the PNG equipment where you terminate the users. ERPF is turned on by default. I then wonder why there is still spoofing, because many people use cheap equipment, cheap hardware, and what are we going to do about them? Cisco colleagues, will you help me out will you help those who uses cheap equipment? I'll comment on the previous could Alexei, the results are changing. So we know that the protection should be arranged by tiers. So the argument about the place where we're going to protect is stupid. So the protection mechanism should exist at all levels, there and here and everywhere. So it's like stick and carrot. It's about it. Yes, indeed, you need to educate the operators so that they would work properly. BCP 38 is a good example of big failure because it doesn't work. Everyone in this audience knows that it failed. It would be good that it worked, but we know that 80% of internet is asymmetric, and turning on ECP 38 will break people's businesses. When people look at some nice, bright future and their current business, somehow they select their current business. I don't know why. You can't explain it. So let us be realistic. Don't just count on silver bullet. We never had it, and we shall never have it. All the tools should be up and running where they are. We shall get the synergy. If we want to do something, to address, to cure all ills, it will never happen. So let us, meanwhile, let's think about it. I hope this result will be good for your business and your planning. Maxim Raevsky from Veru. Maxim. So there is a person here first. Yes, please go ahead. You have the mic.
PCH. I want to say I don't agree with the gentleman ahead of me, and we have proof of that. the gentleman that was just speaking now. Okay. And we have proof of that in the operator community. Because if we sit by and say nothing's going to change, then nothing changes. And the example that I want to use, the direct example, was the, I forget the RFC, I'm sorry, but it's the one that was co-authored by Job Snijders, that says the default behavior of BGP is changing. So now when you bring up an external BGP session, it doesn't advertise anything by default, which is a big step towards fixing the problem. So I would suggest a second poll. This is quite amusing, by the way, because someone's scripting a change to change that to red. But I would suggest a second poll, which is how many of us want the defaults on enterprise equipment to change? Because if you could do that, perhaps not fix it on your ASR or whatever it is today, but perhaps if you fix it at the edge level to specifically disallow it, then the vendors in the room are going to take notice and the vendors are going to make those changes. If we keep saying it's not going to change, you're never going to get the behavior that we had with the default BGP session example. So it's time we stood up as the operator community and said, this is what we want, and vendors, please take note of this.
Yeah, it correlates with the point from the previous speaker, previous speaker. Still, it worked for, or it's working for BGP with import-export filters with the default behavior, but it doesn't mean that it will be working in other fields with the same success. Still, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying it may work, it may not. I haven't seen yet any proposals at the IETF about changing the default behavior. You can be the first.
Maxim?
I encourage you to try it.
Maxim Raevsky, Veru.
Maxim Raevsky, Veru. So let me share my observation. I had some experience when I used incoming filters, incoming traffic filters from various internet exchanges. I was trying to install spoofing IP addresses protection, and to my surprise, the counters were not zero on the filtering lines that filtered private source IP. So URPF check should be at the endpoint providers is kind of about nothing, because still there will be a hole that will go through URPF, penetrate URPF, and sooner or later you will still have to filter the garbage. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. So again, about BCP38 and broadband users, and what my colleagues was saying. So it's not the broadband user who is a source of DDoS attack, but hosting operators and hacked. I know. So very difficult to differentiate, and all sorts of hacked virtual machines, and we need to know that in this area, it's not BCP38 is impossible, but it is much less stable area, and the technical solutions that people use to arrange internet access to such services is broader, and it's more difficult in practice. As BRAS, everybody knows, but cloud services, you know, we still require a search for solutions. And I think that's one of the reasons why BCP38 is not so widely used, because many people are not clear how to do it. In fact, I'm happy to have this exchange. I'm staying here and try to moderate. Yeah, next. May. Denis Miklevich from Saratov. I am an ENOG fellowship participant, and if you deploy IPv6, remember to turn on URPS check street mode. So street mode, yes, they forget to turn it on. So for IPv6, they forget to turn it on. So I saw it on 2 operators. You turn on street mode on operators? No. What I mean is broadband operators who decided to launch IPv6 often forget about URPF strict mode. So on VP4 is good, but for IPv6, it's a separate command, and they keep forgetting. IPv6 attacks is the future, but still I'm not insisting. That's it. Thank you for the comment.
Нет?
If there are no further questions, then I'd like to thank Alexander for the wonderful presentation.